Hello. Today we will be discussing giving temporary pay increases and bonuses to your childcare staff and learning how to reward your staff via these means, but also being sure to protect your business. Today's conversation, we will review how you can give bonuses, how you can give temporary pay increases, and how you can give retroactive and back pay. And what are the differences between all of these different compensation strategies, which may all be at the front of a childcare owner's mind at this present time, as there is a big pressure and challenge to retain staff and pay fair wages and think of ways to use stimulus dollars and other relief funds that many owners have been afforded over the past year. The COVID-19 pandemic has put an enormous strain on childcare businesses. Owners and staff have had to work longer hours and under challenging circumstances. As grants and other funds flow into the childcare system, there is an opportunity to reward hardworking employees for their additional effort through temporary pay increases and bonuses. This also offers providers a means to attract and retain staff in a competitive job market so they can grow their business as we look to emerge from the pandemic. To avoid long-term implications, there are several key steps to properly implementing temporary pay increases or a bonus. In this piece, we're going to review the types of payroll and how you can use bonuses and temporary pay increases to reward staff while protecting your business's interests for the long term. So let's review the different types of pay. Generally, there are two types of pay, and that is regular pay and supplemental pay. Regular pay is the payroll that you're familiar with, where you're providing regular compensation to your staff for their work on an hourly, weekly, or annual basis. Regular payroll is taxed for income as well as unemployment, Social Security, and other programs. Supplemental pay. This is pay that is above and beyond regular pay, which can include overtime, tips, bonuses, or rewards, payments for accumulated or unused time off, severance pay, back pay, or retroactive pay increases. These wages are reported in a separate part of the W-2 that you provide your employees at the end of the year instead of under regular wages. Supplemental pay is also taxed at a different rate, and most payroll taxes are not included. You can include supplemental pay with a regular paycheck that you may issue weekly, bi-weekly, or monthly, depending on your payroll cycle, or you can issue it separately. For a bonus, it may be helpful to issue it as a separate paycheck, so it is clearly separate income. If you are offering temporary pay increase, you will want to include it in a weekly paycheck or as a separate retroactive paycheck, which we will cover a little later in this video. So what are bonuses? Bonuses are additional funds that you give one time, typically for efforts that have gone above and beyond your normal expectations. We are seeing several childcare providers issue bonuses in two ways. First, many programs are giving bonuses as a thank you for the additional efforts that were needed through the COVID-19 pandemic and still needed through recovery. Second, some childcare businesses are using bonuses to attract or retain staff in a competitive job market. For example, An existing employee could be given a retention bonus if they remain at your child care program for an additional 6 months. In the case of a new hire, a bonus could look like a bonus after the first 90 days of employment, which can act as an incentive to accept a position at your child care program. As with any action that you take that affects pay, a bonus should have a formal written communication to your employee, either by letter or email, which includes why they are receiving the bonus, the time period it affects, how much the bonus is, and when will they receive the funds. So a simple communication to an employee might be, "Dear so-and-so, thank you so much for your additional efforts over the past 6 months through the COVID-19 pandemic. It has been a difficult time for everyone, and your contributions helped ensure that children in our care stayed safe and continued to learn. In gratitude for these efforts, we are going to award you a bonus in the amount of X number of dollars, which will be paid out in your next pay period on this month of this day of this year. Thank you again for your efforts. Sincerely, the childcare provider." As you can see, that communication could be very simple and short, but it is important to record the terms. If you are using a bonus as an incentive for staying at your business, you should also put it in writing at the time you make the commitment. Similarly, you want to include the time period, the amount, how it will be paid out, but also make sure that it is clearly not guaranteed. In other words, that if there is poor performance or disciplinary issues along the way, the employee will forfeit the bonus. In this case, an example letter you might give to an existing employee or a new employee might be, "Dear so-and-so, thank you for your commitment to work or for continuing to work at our child care center. In our efforts to keep the best staff members, we are offering you the potential to earn a bonus at the end of 6 months, provided you continue to have satisfactory or better performance and remain employed with our organization during this time. The bonus will be X number of dollars paid out in your payroll as of the date 6 months from now on month, day, and year. We are excited for your continued work and contributions with our child care center. All the best, the provider." So again, in that communication, you can hear some caveats. You never want to imply that a bonus is guaranteed in any way. Instead, it is always based to some degree on performance and timing. This prevents you from having to pay the bonus to an employee who underperforms or is terminated. Another question that we often get from directors and owners is, how much is a typical bonus? Unfortunately, there is no hard or fast rule. The data from the Society for Human Resources Managers, the National Association for Human Resource Professionals, have research showing typical bonuses are between 5 and 20% of annual salary. They can and do at times go higher, and they can be lower as well. Another guide is from the US Small Business Administration related to the Paycheck Protection Program during the pandemic. Their guidance defined a reasonable bonus was 10% or less of annual salary. Also keep in mind, there is no guidance on the frequency of bonuses. So theoretically, you can give one bonus a month for retention or quarterly bonuses to new employees who stay with you. What are temporary pay increases? We are starting to see more childcare providers use temporary pay increases to compensate employees for the additional efforts made during the COVID-19 pandemic, as well as providing increased rates in a labor market that has been particularly competitive. While temporary pay increases could have a powerful impact on ensuring staff morale and retaining staff members, they also need to be implemented carefully. You want to be sure that in no way are you making a commitment to a permanent pay increase. Once again, make sure there's something in writing that tells the employee clearly what the terms of this agreement are. Specifically, the amount of the temporary pay increase, why they are receiving it, how long it will last, and that the increase is, of course, dependent upon continued satisfactory performance. So a letter to an employee notifying them of their temporary pay increase may be, "Dear so-and-so, I'd like to confirm that we are temporarily increasing your pay by X percentage, as we've discussed, in recognition of your efforts, your extra efforts through the COVID-19 pandemic and recovery. This moves you from Y dollars an hour to Z dollars an hour. This is a temporary pay increase and will start on this day of this month of this year and end on this day of this month of this year, with your continued satisfactory performance or better and continued employment with our organization. We look forward to being able to compensate you at a higher level during this period to reflect your extra efforts. Sincerely, the provider." Many times, bonuses and additional temporary pay increases may be ones that you want to apply for a time in the past. For example, you may have received funding from the state that covers both current costs as well as those from the beginning of the calendar year. And you may want to apply some of that funding as retroactive pay or even possibly back pay for your staff during those allowable timeframes. Well, this is an action that you do need to take up with your payroll company. However, it is important for you to know that there are two different types of historical pay. Back pay is used to correct mistakes that may have been made in the past. For example, perhaps you issued a payroll a month ago and then noticed that you forgot to include your staff members' overtime pay. Retroactive pay is paying somebody for past efforts, whether it's their salary or a bonus, but those past efforts at the time were not ones that you would have committed to pay at that level. So for example, you have an employee who is getting paid $15 an hour and you missed 3 hours of their time last month. Well, that will mean $45 of back pay. On the other hand, if instead you had an employee who was making $15 an hour and you wanted to make them eligible for a temporary pay increase of $2 an hour, that goes back to the previous month, that would mean an additional $2 an hour of retroactive pay for that entire month. It's important to make sure that all of these transactions are well documented in a letter with a copy provided both for yourself and for your employee. If the terms change for any reason, especially around temporary pay increases, make sure you write a new letter. For example, if you get some additional grant money and you want to extend your temporary pay increase another 3 months, you will want to note that in writing in a second letter stating the new terms and amending the information from the original letter. It can be a bit tedious and does increase your paperwork, but this is an important legal protection that helps you prepare in case there is any question in the future about whether the payment was one time, temporary, or a permanent change to their level. Hopefully, this tool has helped you understand some of the practices that you can use to provide incentives and additional compensation to your staff that rewards their efforts during the pandemic and the current recovery. Some of these can be easier to apply than others, and we welcome you to meet with a Texas business coach to discuss specific challenges related to implementing these policies. This coaching is absolutely free and open to any licensed childcare provider in the state of Texas. You can register for the free childcare business coaching at childcare.texas.gov or by completing the registration form, which is on the website. And there you can also find helpful, relevant tools and information regarding strengthening your business practices and other resources for childcare business supports.